The jury took almost 8 hours to decide Anderson was guilty on 3 counts of murder. Shortly after the explosion outside the Sydney Hilton in 1978, Anderson became a prime suspect, but denied all involvement.
I certainly hope the investigation clears up this incident as soon as possible, so that any misleading speculation relating to us is cleared up.
Anderson only faced court again after the man he allegedly recruited to plant the bomb, Ivan Pederic, was jailed for 20 years last year for his part in the plot. This morning, his supporters continued to demonstrate for Anderson's innocence as he appeared in court for a sentencing date.
Chamber of Commerce directors had much to discuss at their monthly meeting, including the Hunter Ports Authority plan to move from the harbour foreshore to the State Dockyard site and the appointment of a general manager for the Honeysuckle Goods Yard redevelopment project. Both development opportunities are welcomed by Chamber President David Lamarchant.
It's a site that allows a myriad of developments. Amongst those, I suppose we would be looking at more commercial, retail, leisure, and certainly we'd be looking for increased residential accommodation being built. So the prospects for the Honeysuckle area are nothing less than tremendous.
The Chamber believes there is a continuing demand in the CBD for quality office space and new projects will find tenants. But what of the lesser quality floor space presently in the city centre and all too obviously still vacant?
A lot of these buildings have been refurbished, have been recycled, particularly since the earthquake. Now they will eventually appeal to other tenants or other commercial interests.
In the short term, the most encouraging sign for the city, according to Mr Lamarchant, is the prospect of a strong retailing recovery leading up to Christmas, especially with the introduction of 15 days round-the-clock trading up to the 25th. Like all retailers in the state, Newcastle businesses have noticed a slump, magnified here by the post-earthquake recovery. Mr Lamarchant believes the same factors may now be working in the retailers' favour.
I have a bit of a gut feeling that a lot of shoppers will be coming back in large numbers into the CBD, as it is almost the anniversary of the earthquake, probably just to see how things have been rebuilt, how well we've got on with the job. So I predict that particularly the CBD shops will do very well.
For decades, the site has been known as the Dairy Farmers' Corner. Its clock tower and big milk bottle the gateway to Hunter Street. According to the building's owners, its time and usefulness have run out. Australian Cooperative Foods Limited, a merger between Hunter and South Coast Dairy Cooperatives, will close the packaging and distribution operations at the site. A 2-phase closure will be complete by mid-1991. More than 50 jobs will go, and Newcastle's milk supplies will come from ACF factories at Hexham, Taree and Sydney. ACF intends to build a new distribution depot at Cardiff on this industrial site. It expects to employ 15 of the 65 people currently working at the Dairy Farmers building. Locally bottled milk will also be phased out. The only supplies of this will come from Sydney.
The redevelopment of the Honeysuckle Goods Yard site on Wharf Road is considered the key to the revitalisation of Newcastle CBD. The state government has moved State Rail off the site to free up 12 hectares of inner city land. The man who'll formulate a master plan on the best way to get the land developed is Robert Zulo, a 31-year-old business studies graduate with experience in property planning.
It's one of the most exciting projects that I've had the opportunity to be involved in, and obviously it'll be a most exciting project for Newcastle.
Working with the Hunter Economic Development Council, Zulo will coordinate input from community groups and potential investors. While his brief is to maximise the return on the land to the state government, the community objectives are still high on the agenda. He says the government will decide whether to lease or sell parcels of land depending on market values. What sort of development should go here? Should it be hotels, shops or residential development?
Could be all of those. It could be one of those. I mean, as I say, the whole process of the master plan will be to identify land use patterns based on market demand, whether that's current or future demand, but certainly it's to identify the things that will work and not just opportunities that are going to be lost in the process.
Smith Park, National Park and the University Ovals will still provide an important service to the hockey players of Newcastle, but of greater importance for the future development of the sport is the opening of the $2.5 million centre at Broadmeadow. Boasting the latest in pitch surface, AstroTurf, which is a water-based playing surface, the standard of play is set to dramatically improve.
It will be absolutely wonderful for junior hockey players. We propose to introduce a sports development program. The future of this centre will rely totally on how well we can introduce hockey as a skill sport, and we will be looking at skills not only in the immediate surroundings but also up the valley, the Central Coast, Torres, etc.
The New South Wales Minister for Sport, Recreation and Racing, Bob Rowland-Smith, will open the centre on November the 10th, and so far the state government has provided $450,000 towards the completion of the complex. The federal government has provided $130,000, the Newcastle City Council a total of $310,000, and the most pleasing contribution has been from the players themselves of $240,000. Today that total was boosted by $10,000 from the Men's Association and a further $10,000 from the Ladies Association. At present, many of the talented players in the region have to travel to Sydney for state training and top competition, but there is talk that the New South Wales women's state team will now train at the International Hockey Centre.
Well, it's still being negotiated at this time. I really don't know. We've just got to wait and see how it develops, I guess, but it's really tremendous. Of course, this is a complex for Newcastle hockey players, and we've got to look after our own people first, naturally.
And for the opening day's activities, 2 matches of international standing. Olympic gold medalist Great Britain will take on 4th placed Australia in a full test match, while New South Wales will play Italy. For manager Brian Emery, that act is going to be hard to follow.
That's what worries me. I mean, you start off with Australia versus England, what's next? So, yes, it's a great program, and the fact that New South Wales are playing Italy, the Italian national team, in the early game, yeah, it's not a bad start.
The discovery of the semi-naked woman's body came after 2 calls to police on Saturday morning. After the first call at 5:30, police searched the old railway pay office, mistaking it for the derelict station master's cottage. Finding nothing, they resumed normal duties. It wasn't until a second call 3 hours later, at 8:30, that police located the body of June Brislane. She died of massive head injuries and was impaled by a railway survey peg in an attack which police describe as bizarre. The mother of 2 from Mayfield was last seen on Thursday night leaving the Great Northern Hotel, where she'd been a regular drinker for years.
We've been able to trace the lady's movements throughout the day on Thursday up until about 10 p.m. on Thursday evening. There have been some other sightings of her on Friday, but those are yet to be confirmed. Certainly the circumstances of this murder is certainly bizarre.
The victim's black vinyl bag was found here outside the Newcastle Surf Club pavilion on Friday morning, but local club officials didn't hand it into police until today. The discovery of the bag is an important clue. It will help police determine when Mrs. Brislane actually met her death.
Bearing in mind the bag was found now on the early hours of Friday morning, we're looking at the prospect of her meeting her death either Thursday evening or the early hours of Friday morning.
There appears to be no motive for the brutal attack. Police inquiries have been complicated by the number of outside visitors to the city on Thursday night, but it appears Mrs. Brislane's death has touched the community. Flowers today adorn the derelict cottage where her mutilated body was found.
According to Mr Hawke, tomorrow's historic Premiers' Conference, the first of a series planned to make the federal system work better, will be friendly and cooperative. And showing his fair dinkum about change, he acknowledged that a centrally important issue would be the imbalance between what the states spend and their very limited ability to raise their own revenue.
There'll be an acceptance on our part of the need to try and find ways in which we can give them more access to revenue of their own.
In other words, more taxing powers, but with the federal government still calling the economic shots.
There will be an acceptance on the part of the states of our concern about the need for effective macroeconomic control.
Victorian Labor Premier Joan Kerner and New South Wales Liberal leader Nick Greiner have already said that state income or consumption taxes are likely to be considered as long as the federal government agrees to cut its take so that no more tax is collected overall. Though today, Mr Greiner made it clear that sorting out a new federal-state tax mix will take time. The Premiers' Conference in the Queensland Parliament building will set up a high-powered task force on the revenue question, but the states are not united.
I would have thought that the last thing one wants to see is more state-based taxes or more taxes of any kind.
Mr Hawke hopes the revamping of federalism that starts tomorrow will help restore his own standing and that of his government, an important consideration for him in the light of the huge anti-Labor swings at the weekend in New Zealand and the Northern Territory. The Prime Minister has few illusions about the significance of those results.
I wouldn't like to face an election at the moment.
Laurie Oakes, Brisbane.
I'm not...
Once the official signing was over, the 5 visitors from Yashirogawa Public School, 2 hours from Tokyo, were keen to learn as much as they could about their sister school, and Cardiff South pupils were eager to oblige. Of particular interest was the preschool that forms part of the education complex, a new concept to the Japanese. They were obviously impressed.
They're very interested at anything that we have in our classrooms. Their classes are much bigger, and their children behave slightly differently to ours. They have more instruction, and our children are more involved in the learning process.
The children enjoyed an authentic Japanese language lesson and will enjoy many more benefits, including trips to Japan, thanks to their new sister school.
They've taken very enthusiastically to the Japanese. They learn a lot quicker than we do. And they're able to learn things about cultures from other countries. It's given them a much broader perspective of children in other countries.
Police received a report that toxic fumes were billowing from the factory at 8 o'clock last night. They cordoned off the area while firefighters wearing protective clothing entered the building.
There is some chemical reaction occurring in the factory. We're not certain at this stage what the reaction is.
Efforts to control the leak were hampered because police were able to contact the factory's owners to find out what kind of chemicals were involved. Strong winds carried a toxic cloud across the suburb. Nearby streets were evacuated, with 200 residents moved to a makeshift camp at a local shopping centre.
I smelled something very bad, a shocking smell. So we just had to get in the car and come straight away.
I'm burning now on the lips and across here.
It took 2 hours to stabilise the chemicals. Only then were people allowed to return to their homes. A blaze in Fitzroy has destroyed a fabrics warehouse, causing more than $1 million damage. An investigation is already underway into the cause of the fire.
It's the first time in 7 years the contest has been held in Newcastle. Its organisers consented to the venue after the home team had won the title for the third year running. That's hardly surprising, with Luke Egan, Nicky Wood, Matt Hoy and Simon Law in the team. They're also ranked among the world's top 30 professional surfers. The Quicksilver is a prestige event and carries a $5,000 first prize. 18 eight-man teams from as far away as Western Australia will be competing, as well as formidable squads from Sydney, including Narrabeen's Damien Hardman, and the Gold Coast. The dark horse entry will be Stockton. Elimination heats will be held throughout Saturday until only 4 teams remain in the contest. The 5 best surfers from each team then enter a fast-paced tag team surf-off. Each rider only catches 4 waves and can't afford a single wipeout.
You've got the pressure of knowing if everybody on the beach sees you fall off, you're going to feel like the worst person in the world. So they don't want to fall off, they want to win their 4th Australian Championship.
The tag team event should give spectators a good close-up view of the action.
It's more like the tennis or something you really can get involved in because you can actually see who's winning. It's excitement, it really becomes an exciting spectacle rather than just watching 1 or 2 guys out there in surfing.
The Merewether team's performance is also a matter of honour to them. The club is synonymous with the local history and development of the sport and has set up a display of 26 years of trophies and photos at the nearby beach hotel. Many of the club's founding fathers will be watching the progress of the club's latest generation of surfers along Merewether Beach this weekend.
I apply a type of teaching methodology which is fairly new in Australia, and I'm the only one in Chinese, if I may say that, using that methodology, which is called accelerate learning methodology, and the students do feel that they are learning so much faster and quicker and most importantly, enjoyable.
Conditions were far from ideal, but that didn't stop the Merewether boys from making a solid start. Dave MacArthur took second in the opening heat, while Craig McMillan used a last-minute wave to snatch a heart-stopping victory. Shane Powell continued the trend for the defending champions, putting on a radical display of tight, snappy surfing. Conditions continued to deteriorate, but the Avoca import used good wave selection to overcome a flashy but inconsistent Will Webber. Webber's ITN club is seen as a major threat to the Novocastrians, so Powell's victory was doubly sweet. Port Macquarie transplant Marcus Brabant was the next to fly the Merewether colours, and he wasted no time sealing the heat with this brilliant tube ride. Not content with merely beating his rivals, Brabant went berserk in the closing minutes to record the day's most emphatic win.
It's more scary in one of these than it is single. At least you just bomb out yourself in a normal event, but these ones, a lot of people are relying on you.
Lennox boy Craig Holly and Queenslander Josh Locke made life difficult for Matt Hoy in the next heat, but the local lad used raw power to overcome his opposition and leave Merewether in the box seat. 5 clubs are still within striking distance, but Simon Law is confident the defending champs will handle the sloppy conditions and make it back-to-back titles.
Everyone's seemed to adapted well to small wave conditions since we surf a lot on tour. So the boys are just going to surf their best no matter how big or small it is.
Going well so far. Pretty confident of 4 in a row?
I hope so, yeah.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Katara is breaking new school ground in education by catering for the special needs of children who are too disruptive for ordinary classes. Though the school has been operating with up to 20 children since February, today it was officially opened by Minister for School Education, Virginia Chadwick.
Well, it's unique because it's the only school that really does want children to leave the school, and it wants them to leave so that they can be integrated back into their normal school and school life.
Students aged from 5 to 16 travel from as far afield as Tanilba Bay and Toronto each day and study here for around 12 months. Since closing as a primary school, the buildings have had a new coat of paint and 2 small time-out rooms have been added. The doors open only from the outside and steel mesh covers the windows. The principal says they are a necessary part of the school discipline.
More often than not, we leave the door open. If in the case of a child who has been very violent, we may close the door, but only for 5 minutes, and then it's opened.
But today the only trouble was keeping awake through all the officialdom. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.